So, one objection that antinatalists run into quite often, I think, is that suffering is good for us. It's beneficial, we need it, it gives life meaning, and so on. In essence, the argument here is something like this: suffering can lead to or help us get something good, and therefore, suffering is good. And so, antinatalists are just confused about suffering. Well, notice there's an important ambiguity in the term good being used here, because the claim that suffering is good can mean one of two things. One is that suffering itself is good. Another is that suffering can help us get, or is sometimes required to get something good. Now, the natalist no doubt wants us to believe that the argument shows that suffering itself is good, thereby challenging antinatalism at its core. Well, it's easy to see how the argument, understood in this sense, fails, or at any rate misleading, if we consider the following argument. Spending money can lead to or help us get something good, good things, right? And therefore, spending money is intrinsically good. This clearly doesn't follow from the argument. I mean, just think about what this would entail. If spending money were intrinsically good, right, we should want to lose money for its own sake. We should want to just lose money without getting anything in return. And this clearly is not the case. But losing money is bad. It's just that sometimes we're willing to accept this bad, this cost, if the benefits are sufficiently great to warrant it. And I think exactly the same can be said about suffering in this case. Again, if suffering were good in itself, intrinsically good, we should see people just seeking the worst forms of suffering for its own sake, for the sake of the suffering. And this we don't see. So what people really mean when they say that suffering is good is that suffering is a cost. It's a bad thing that we sometimes accept. And it's important to distinguish this from the claim that suffering is preferred for its own sake, which plainly it isn't. Suffering is intrinsically bad. The question is it outbalanced by all the good things in life? Or conversely? And I think that's the sort of question we need to be asking rather than denying the badness of suffering, which seems to me to go against our most immediate and palpable experience of suffering. And so again, there's a difference between saying that all the good in the world is worth purchasing at the cost of all the suffering in the world, which seems incredible enough. But it's another sort of order of implausibility to say that suffering is intrinsically good, which I think is just plainly false, right? So that is all for now, and thanks again for listening.